Hello. Well, they asked me to talk today about hot topics for dance halls and how to survive in today's environment. So I thought that the title would be appropriately named. The times they are changing, since they definitely are, as we heard from Pud earlier, and Scott about halls that are no longer around. Just a little commercial about Texas Dance Hall preservation. Our mission is to promote public awareness, preservation, and continuing use of historic Texas dance halls. We were organized in 2007 as a statewide 501c3, and we're all a volunteer board and advisory. And popular Bob Dylan song about change, because that's what it's all about, to keep your head above water these days. A lot of this is information that Patrick shared. I think the most important piece of this is current uses, because they're used. We've got an inventory of about 500 halls in our database, and it's a constantly changing target, because some that may have had public dances no longer have dances, some that may have been opened or in use are no longer in use. So we're in the process of trying to update all that over the next year or so. And some of this I'm just going to run through since I wasn't sure. This is just sort of what Patrick talked about earlier about the different configurations and halls. They were always the community center, they were the turnarounds, they were the singing societies, they were the agricultural societies, the religious groups, and the SPJSTs. This is just a picture from our website that you can go and search halls by county, by name, or by band, which has been added since that was taken. And just a few examples of halls that are no longer around. Just to give you an example, this was the hall that burned in 2007 and what it looked like before. And it has been rebuilt, but the windows are small, they don't open. It's still multi-sided, but it's a much less fabulous place. This is one of the Swiss halls that's right outside of Austin, Texas, and it's in dire shape. This is probably taken, a couple years ago, Steve? So I know it's been vandalized several times, and fires have been built inside of it and that type of thing. So I thought, rather than trying to come up with my own list of things that halls can do to survive today, I thought, well, I'll go out and talk to some halls and just find out from them what they believe are the things that they're doing to keep their heads above water. And these are the halls that I talked with. Some are, Luckenbach is, the one that is fairly well known. Some of these are for-profit, the others are non-profit. Some of them operate as dance halls today, some are more rental facilities. The for-profit halls are Luckenbach, open 7 days a week, tourist destination, does music every day of the week. They do big festivals occasionally, and of course it's the place Willie Nelson started doing his picnic. And of course there's always the song. Schneider Hall, which is a small private rental venue now, that it had been a dance hall back in the 30s and 40s. And Pat's Hall is a rental venue now. It was sold in recent years, and it was one that Pud had asked, I think earlier, about halls that were both commercial and dance use. Pat's Hall is basically a book repository or a book publishing company in the back, and then they open the hall back up. And it's an outdoor facility as well as an indoor. Luckenbach, just a little bit of history about that, is in the hill country. Hondo Crouch was a big self-promoter. And when Willie and Waylon made the song famous, that's when Luckenbach basically was put on the map. And it's a place where everybody is truly somebody. And I talked to the person who used to book Luckenbach for about 8 years and said, what made Luckenbach so successful? Because it very much is. And she said, sheer luck and the song. That they really didn't have a business plan or a plan of attack. It just sort of happened, and the song is what made it happen, and they just got lucky, where people started coming. Of course, the picnic was held there, and they probably made most of their money on merchandise. T-shirts, caps, and other things. They have an ever-changing schedule of good music, which is not always consistent with the dance hall. It's city music, concert-type music, singer-songwriter music, so it's not always things that you would think would be in a dance hall. And then, of course, the growth of tourism in the hill country with the wine industry and distilleries are going in right and left. Trigger finger. And they've got a a big outdoor space. It's pretty much a town, and it's got a post office and a saloon, big outdoor areas, fire pits. It's popular with the motorcycle crowd. And this is just an example. They're doing blues festivals there. They do, every weekend they've got something. They've got the Mud Diver Festival. They've got Labor Day Festival, which is shown here. So they do all kinds of things creatively to keep people coming back. Big lineups of musicians. Very scenic as well. And all the windows, as you can see, open up. It's open air. There's no heat really to speak of. Ray Benson in the Sleep at the Wheel played for, this was some benefit for someone that died, I think when Johnny Gimbel died maybe. Schneider Hall, which is one of my favorite little halls because it's so typical of a small dance hall, sits on private property south of I-10. First time I saw it, it was a hay barn, and they had it sort of cleared out and decorated for a graduation party. And this was probably back in 2008 maybe. They started to fix the place up for a wedding of one of the daughters. And then I think that became known in the general community, and other people wanted to have weddings there. And so the family that owned the property started, I think, renting it out, and they started to fix the place up a little bit more. And then the mother passed away. And so the daughters had about 5 weddings on the books. They felt like they needed to, adhere to the commitment they had made. So they went ahead and had the weddings, and then they started getting more calls. And Amber, who is the daughter that now runs the place, she finally decided, I need to basically uphold my mother's dream of making this a wedding venue and reopen it, and so they did. The things that make it work, it's family owned, and the father and the daughter are active members of their LLC. The brother and sister are inactive. They transitioned in 2014 to being a totally rental venue. They do about 20 weddings a year, 15 parties, and 1 public music concert, which is really just a sit-down concert. And it holds about 150 people maybe, give or take. It's very small. And they do a lot of community kinds of activities there. They donate the hall for German Society meetings and school functions and that type of thing. They've got no employees to speak of. They hire a few folks, their family members, when they need to. They focus on their core new business and continue to refine that, which is the weddings. They market locally as well as their website. They put most of their profit back into the hall. Landscaping, they built restrooms, they put some sidewalks in, things like that. It just sits out in the middle of a big field, lots of pretty trees around it. They added restrooms over to the side, so they left the hall pretty much the way it was. And this reminds me probably of Dewdrop in Mandeville more than anything else, because they didn't do anything to it really to speak of. No air conditioning, they had mainly parties. One day this was a birthday party for a 1-year-old. And this was earlier, before they really reopened it, when they were still doing some work on it. Pat's Hall is the one that was partially a book publishing company in the back. It has history over past decades, and then in 1985, the owners that just sold it, which were the book publishers, they bought the property and the house mainly to house their book publishing company, never thinking they were going to be in the dance hall business. And then they decided to start doing some weddings and do some public dances, and they continue to improve the property to do that. This is really the hall, but it's a concrete block building, has concrete floors, so it really wasn't a hall to begin with, even though I think it was built for that. They started doing some public events monthly. They had several that did well. They continued to do some, started booking some weddings, did a lot better financially with the weddings, and realized that that was really their core business. So they did fewer and fewer public events and more weddings. And then the performing rights organizations got involved and started billing them outlandish fees, and so they felt like no longer do public public events is just to stick to the private. It's a beautiful big oak tree. There used to be a stage up underneath it. When I first saw it, the branches were down on the ground. It was probably hadn't been trimmed in years or maintained in years. And this is what it looked like after the shears took it over and cleaned it up. The old ticket booth. And I love it's like an outdoor nightclub with the booths and the seating. Beautiful place.
You tell you don't get much rain there.
It's the hill country. It's out west of Austin. It's a beautiful area, big German area.
Yes, they danced.
They danced around the tree. Yeah. And the stage was kind of upward. I'm not even sure how the musicians, I'm sure back in the old days before the tree got so overgrown, I'm sure the musicians had their heads in the trees pretty much. And then the nonprofit halls, which are mainly the associations and the nonprofit halls and more the community halls, got 4 of those. I included the Mississippi Hall, Hunterman Hall, because that's kind of a little favorite of mine, just as a comparison. So Twin Sisters Hall, which is probably one of the oldest dance halls in Texas, even though it's hard to say which one really is the oldest. And they've been holding one dance a month since the 1880s. It's part of their charter. Anhalt, which Patrick mentioned, is the big agricultural hall. Probably holds 1,000 people, huge. And they went from having 2 events a year only. That's all they did in this hall for years and years and years. And then they started doing more and more events over the years, and now they have a dance just about every week.
Once a month.
No, they do them more often, a couple times a month, he said. Just depends on what time of year it is, I think. La Bahia Verien is over east of Austin, another very large German hall, and it totally is all private rentals. And we did a fiddle festival there last fall, which was the first public event they've done there in a long time. They kind of liked it, but they're very risk adverse to alcohol, which a lot of these halls are, because they don't want to have to pay for that extra insurance. So they're very hesitant about doing public events and public dances because of that. And then Hunterman Hall in Mississippi in Bay St. Louis, it was one that was renovated after Katrina by a California couple, and it started as an African-American hall, and they've transitioned. They're doing a few dances a month, 1 dance a month, but they're struggling. I talked to them the other day, trying to find new things to do. So Twin Sisters Dance Hall, they had a bowling alley at one time. It's the one that's been open since the 1880s, pretty consistently, having dances once a month. They just went from a nonprofit corporation status to a 501c3, which they say has opened up huge doors for grants for them. They're all volunteer. Some of the families that started this over decades ago are still involved. They're descendants. Here's a dance they have their dance on the first Saturday night of the month. And there's 3 halls in this area. There's Twin Sisters, Anhalt, and Candelia, and they kind of come together cooperatively, and they each have a dance on one Saturday each month, so they don't compete with each other. So Twin Sisters does the first Saturday, Candelia's the second, Anhalt's the third. They obtained their 501c3 recently, opened up doors for grants. They're diversifying their revenue stream. They're starting to do some music videos there, some interest in film. They're doing some one-day festivals now. And they're starting to do 1 annual fundraiser a year. They need a new roof, so they did one last year, raised about $12,000. They're going to start doing them on an annual basis. And they've gone out and they're starting to do a lot more networking in the community, challenging the community to get more involved with the hall again, because a lot of the community had kind of fallen off and they don't come. It had gone to, they used to have 300 and 400 people to a dance, had gotten down to about 50 people would show up. And they almost closed because of the PROs and just people not supporting it. And over the last probably 2.5, 3 years, they've kind of come back to life. So it is possible to kind of slowly die and get reborn again. They have found that social media definitely is the way to go. And they said that if they had money to spend, they'd spend it on advertising and promotion more than anything else. And then listening to what people say. And then they also feel like it's good to give back to the community, so they open the hall up to project graduation, which raises money for the graduation each year. And again, it's all volunteer, nobody gets paid. The men work the bar, the ladies work the door. And it's got a nice big dance floor, very well maintained hall, needs a new roof. And we had our first Fiddle Festival here in 2014, which was the first time they had done something like this. And we had workshops and showcases with all types of Texas fiddling. And that was a very popular event. And then we ended up the day with a dance at the end. We had about 350, 400 people that showed up for this at this hall. And this is one of the things that they put together last year. They had it as a full day event. It was a fundraiser. They had school activities. They had an art contest from the high school. And really some great art. And so they had a contest for that, getting the kids involved, because I think getting the next generation involved is really important to the long-term survivability of a hall. And then we had CBS News come to this hall last summer and did a story about some dance halls in Texas. And Twin Sisters was one of the places that they stopped, so that gave them a lot of good exposure and kind of re-energized them, I think, to some extent. And their beautiful curtain, which you'll see these in a number of halls still. This one's in pretty good condition. Ann Hall, which is the other big German hall in the same area. And it's a member association, it's agricultural. They're the ones that only had 2 events a year, their May Fest and their Fall Fest, for years and years and years. They didn't use the hall for any other purpose, which is kind of interesting, since it's such a big, fabulous hall. And then over the years, they started going through changes and felt like they needed to have more events. And now they do, like I say, dances, and they do rent out for weddings and things like that. They say that one of the big things is having a sign on the road. That gets a lot of people, because it's all back off down the road with a gate and all that, so it's locked up routinely. So David Davenport, who I spoke with, said 2 big tips. Find your place in the community and capitalize on it. Know your audience and market to it, and be open to alternatives, because that's kind of what they had to do to survive. And he said the halls that have failed did because they didn't change, or they couldn't change. And so I think it's finding a way to kind of evolve with your local demographics, what the local community is wanting, the music trends that are changing, and that type of thing. So they went from the 2 events a year to a more regular schedule. They added weddings, which they never did before, when they said they really hate it because they're sort of high demand. They added wine to their bar sales, which they just did recently, and they said that's really helped on their bar sales. They want to learn about their audience, and they do a survey at the gate a few times a year to find out what people want to see, what kind of music. They said they stayed pretty true to their original tradition of country music, and that's what people expect to see there. So they haven't varied too much. In this place, the windows open, the doors open, a lot of people sit outside even, because there's not a lot of seating in the hall, it's mainly a dance floor. And this is, I think this is one of our big events there that TDHP did 4 years ago maybe, with Asleep at the Wheel. Had about 1,000 people there. And they won't let you stand on the dance floor, it's for dancing. So they get really upset if you stand on the dance floor. And they don't do concerts, it's all about dancing in these places like this. They have a big dining hall in the back, so they always do barbecue. It's one of the things that they make their money on, even though they say they really don't make a huge amount as far as marginally on their food, but food's a big part of it. It's just a beautiful hall. And there's the seating around the dance floor, and then you've got tables up on the side. St. Louis, just outside of New Orleans. It was originally an African-American benevolent hall. The Daughters of the American Veterans bought it at one point, started doing events there. It was about to be demolished after Katrina. And Jesse drove by on his bicycle, this couple from California that had bought some property there, and called us back in California and said, we can't let this happen to this hall. And they bought it, renovated it to what it is today, and it's down on the Blues Trail. And there's that sign that Scott mentioned earlier. And they kind of started off with a big bang. They got on the Blues Trail. They became a 501c3. They got some grants to renovate the hall. All those things happened in the very early days. And they said they kind of got complacent because they thought, wow, we've made it. And then after they kind of quit that, then they started to see the slump. People quit coming. It wasn't a big deal anymore. It wasn't new and fresh. And so they put the property on the market, probably about 6 to 9 months ago. They were ready to move on and do something different. Felt somebody else would come in and take it over and do a better job. Couldn't sell it. They thought, okay, we just need to figure out a new way. So now they're doing Sunday Fado Does. They're trying some new things on Sunday. Family Day, you know, that people, they said there's too much going on in the community now because it's become a little artsy place. So trying to find new things to do to keep people interested. And there's a potential that Amtrak may run through there at some point. So if that happens, it will change the whole game because that hall is a big part of the rail history there. And I met this lady when I was over here in September. I came and did a tour of Louisiana halls and then went over and went to Hunterman Hall. And Miss Elvina, who was a historian, she came in and talked to us. And she told stories of coming to that hall and going out to the bootlegger because the lawman wouldn't expect a young girl going to the bootleggers and all the moonshine back to the hall. And Bahia is another big German hall on the other side of Austin, between Austin and Houston, that really dense area where all the halls are. German hall, member organization, still multi-generational. The people that run it are all volunteers, some of the same families. You know, the president in his 70s remembers, you know, going there when he was, you know, a child. Remains very active, you know, with family-oriented activities. But they're very adverse to liquor sales and public events because of just the alcohol issues and concerns with that. We did our second annual Fiddle Festival there and started talking to them about doing public events once or twice a year to get people into the hall because people see these great buildings and they're going, is that a barn? What is that? They drive down the road and they don't really know what it is because they've never gone inside. And once they go in, they see these fabulous architectural structures and the dancing and the dance floors. They fall in love and they want to come back, and yet there's no way to go back because there's no public events there anymore. So it's a matter of getting them comfortable with, you know, there are right ways to do those kinds of things. It's a big, beautiful hall. Well maintained, all volunteers.
Is it near a bay? Is it near a bay?
No.
Near a bay, because Bahia is bay.
Oh, well, it's the road. The way it got the name is it's on the road going to the bay, going to the coast. And what they've done to diversify is there's a big antique festival that happens just down the road from them a couple times a year. That's become a huge economic, you know, influx for that area. And they decided they'd turn the hall into an antique sort of place during a couple times of the year. So they're doing their own La Bahia antique show. And they rent the hall out to vendors, and it's gotten so big that they do it outside on the grounds. They've got several acres there around them. And that's been a real economic booster for them as well. A lot of work, but it's just one of those things they can do that sort of diversifies their activities and their cash flow. And this was at the Fiddle Festival. We did a little square dancing piece. So the common things were Stay in touch with the times and stay in touch with your community and the interests of your audience. Because what worked 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago won't necessarily work today. And I think we heard that theme from Pud and then from Scott, is that, you know, the music changes, the audience changes, people age, they don't go out anymore. You know, things just constantly change in each community. Becoming a 501c3 appears to have been helpful for many because it opens up the door to grants that they wouldn't have gotten as a for-profit, and that's really helped some halls kind of re-engage. That's not an option for many, of course, but that's one thing to consider. Halls that use volunteers or members keep their overhead down, so their fixed costs are way less because of that. Most of these, interestingly enough, with the exception of a few, don't really have a real structured financial plan or business plan, which I find very interesting. They just kind of do things because it works, and they kind of just evolve and try this and try that, but they don't really have this kind of strategy. Let's do this, and let's track this and trend this. They just kind of, whatever works for them seems to work. Even though they've all said, we probably should be a little bit better at that, at tracking different things. Social media obviously has become the way to advertise in a very low-cost way, and you can reach a lot more people outside of your general catchment area by doing that, and most of them said that's really made a difference for them in most cases. And it's not like one size fits all. There's not just a list of things, you do these 10 things and it's gonna keep your hall open. You have to really kind of customize it to your area, because each hall has its own personality, its own community factors, and they all have to kind of hone it to make what works and kind of constantly stay nimble. And then maintaining these old structures obviously are costly, and finding reputable vendors to take care of the hall and help with hall maintenance is really important. And the performing rights organizations is probably a topic that this group may not really even know what it is, so I'm not really sure I want to go into great detail, but it's copyright laws. So anytime a public event takes place and there's live music played or even a jukebox or streaming, you pay, that hall gets billed by the copyright organizations for music that's played there. And they're hefty fees, you have to buy a license. And some halls have closed because of this. And that's a factor why some halls don't do public dances anymore. That and the liability factor. And there's some options. We have an attorney on our board who's offered some suggestions. None of them are easy, none of them are simple. Sometimes maybe not even be viable, but it's just alternatives of looking at how you can work around paying them or paying less. So there's some tools that are here as far as tracking, making talent buys, etc., that might be helpful for halls that want a little structure. An offer sheet, so if you're going to make an offer to a band, you have sort of a document that does that. It's not just a handshake agreement or a word of mouth or whatever, or a phone call, you document it. One of the things on here is asking the band to give you a set list, so that way you've got documentation of what songs were played. So if ASCAP, BMIC set come along, at least you have a document that shows what they played. And at least it shows you've got some kind of record keeping going on. Information to send out, so that all the personnel at the hall really know what's going on any given day with the show, all the details related to that, and the band has information. Settlement and expense sheets, so you keep up with every show that happens. Pretty simple financial stuff, what did you spend for advertising, what did you spend for staff, what did you spend for beer, that kind of thing, and then what did you make at the door. So then when you're settling with your band, you kind of have an idea about how the money flowed and what they got and what you got and what the expenses were going to be. Talent expense tracking, so if you wanted to know, I hired band A and band B, and band A did this amount of money and band B did this amount of money. If I was going to hire them again, which one would I hire, and which one did a better job, or which one brought more money in the door? Not that that always means it's going to happen a second time the same way, but at least it gives you some information about trends with bands and the draw. And then if you want to keep up with your PRO, your Performing Rights Organization information, you've got a tool to do that. And if you're doing big events, having an event planning tool and implementation tool is always helpful. That way you can replicate things and improve on things as you go. and then creating an event budget sheet ahead of time. So you know what you planned and how you did, actual versus budget. And again, the times change constantly, so you can't assume that if it works today, it's going to work tomorrow. And I think halls that are surviving today are the ones that are able to constantly look ahead and look to the future and continue to make changes and adjustments to how they do business.